Amy Charlan, and last month I joined McCann as co-director. So I'm really delighted to be facilitating today's talk. We're really glad to be joined by Sahar Francis and Wissam Ahmed. Sahar is the General Director of Ramallah-based Addameer Prisoner Support and Human Rights Association, which is a Palestinian NGO providing legal and advocacy support to Palestinian political prisoners in Israeli and Palestinian prisons. An attorney by training, she joined the association in 1998, first as a human rights lawyer, and then as head of the legal unit. And with over 20 years of human rights experience, including human rights counseling and representation, Sahar was also on the board of the Palestine section for Defense for Children International for 4 years, and on the board for the Union of Agricultural Work Committees. Sahar did her practice on human rights in the Society of St. Yves in Jerusalem on issues of land confiscations, house demolitions, labor rights, and freedom of movement. And in 1997, she worked with the legal unit at Badil Refugee Rights Center. Wissam is a Palestinian American, born and raised in the United States. He has a BA and Juris Doctorate from Louisiana State University and Masters of Laws from the Irish Center for Human Rights in Galway. He's been working as a human rights advocate with Al-Haq since 2006, where he is now the director of the Applied Center for International Law and coordinator of Al-Haq's business and human rights program. His area of research focuses on the economic incentive structure perpetuating the colonization of Palestine along business lines. And then behind the scenes, you can't see them, we also have McCann staff, Hussein and Sarona, and they're going to be the ones who are writing to you in the chat and making sure that everything runs smoothly this evening. So before we talk directly with Wissam and Sahar, I'm just going to talk a little bit about a brief background on the topic before I bring them in. In October, Israel designated 6 prominent Palestinian civil society institutions as terrorist organizations. These organizations are Al-Haq, Addameer, Defense for Children International, the Bisan Center for Research and Development, the Union of Palestinian Women's Committees, and the Union of Agricultural Work Committees. Working in their specific fields, they have a long and impressive track record addressing the impact of Israel's settler, colonial, and apartheid regime on the lives of Palestinians, and also calling on the international community to ensure that Israel is held accountable for its systematic human rights violations. International human rights activists and groups have denounced Israel's recent move as a blatant attempt to prevent the organizations from documenting human rights abuses, and have declared their solidarity by adopting the Stand with the 6 calls to action. So with this background in mind, I'm really honored to invite Sahar and Wissam into the conversation, and really thank you both very much for being with us here today, especially given everything that's going on for you and your organizations. So just to start, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the missions of your organizations and the work that you do. First of all, it would be great to hear from you, Wissam, a little bit more about Al-Haq. I know you've been running for a long time as an organization, and it'd be great to hear a bit more about your mission.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much to McCann for organizing this. I think in these difficult times, the best response to attempts to silence the messenger is to amplify the message. And McCann is playing an important role in this, and I appreciate that. Al-Haq is the first Palestinian human rights organization. It was established back in 1979. Al-Haq in Arabic means the truth, and this is part of the basis for the work that we pursue is to uncover the developments of and the violations that are happening on the ground and expose them, apply international law, and raise the issue to the international level to try to get the international community to adhere to its obligations with regard to international law. And first and foremost is the pursuit of the right to self-determination for the Palestinian people through the tools that are available within the international system. And when Al-Haq was established, it was in the early days of the institutionalization of the human rights regime. And a lot of the work that Al-Haq did focused on monitoring and documentation, gathering information on the ground, with the hope that the exposure of these facts as applied to international law would lead to action. Obviously, it was easier said than done, and over time, the organization developed a more proactive approach towards advocating for the enforcement of international law by targeting the political will of the international community, using mechanisms that have developed and been designated as the legitimate tools through which we're supposed to pursue the right to self-determination, using those tools. And because we've been doing this for so long, we've been able to refine our ability to develop this work and still cause discomfort to the Israeli occupation. And I think this is part of the reason that there's a pushback against us and the other organizations, is because we have been able to use the law in a way that still challenges the Israeli occupation for over 40 years now, and continuing to push further and further. And now our work is pushing on the areas of accountability in business and human rights and crime of apartheid, and all of these things are very much sort of the cutting edge on the pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people and making the Israeli occupation more and more uncomfortable.
Thank you, Wissam. And we'll come back, I think, to talk a little bit more about kind of the history of all of that at work in a little bit later. But before we do that, I'd just also like to hear a little bit more from Sahar as well in terms of Addameer's mission and history as well, and the work that you're currently doing.
Yes, good evening. And again, thanks for this great opportunity. Addameer actually was established back in December 1991 as a legal aid program to support Palestinian political prisoners arrested by the Israeli occupation forces in the first Intifada. And first we were working in Jerusalem. Later, after the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, we registered under the PA and moved to Ramallah, actually, the center for the organization. And also by the years, we developed our work from just legal aid to include as well visitation program on weekly basis to all detention centers and prisons, to monitor and document the violations that the prisoners, detainees face in these prisons, mainly torture and ill treatment and health conditions for the prisoners. And based, of course, on our legal work and the documentation we do, we publish reports, studies, and we do our advocacy work, including much advocacy on the UN level to exhaust the UN special procedures system when it comes for torture, arbitrary detention, and other violations. And as Wissam said, all these years with our experience led us to take the fight against the immunity to another stage by trying to force more and more the use of these mechanisms, especially when it was able as well the ICC and all the investigation concerning the war crimes that we thought for all these years that they are relevant to the case of the prisoners. Of course, Addameer has a long experience in prisoners issues, and we developed a very well network with friends, activists, and other movements around the world working on political prisoners issues in Europe, in South Africa, in Turkey, in America, in the United States, Latin America, in different areas where we believe the oppression that the Palestinian prisoners face have lots of similarities with other oppressions in other contexts as well. This is very helpful in our campaigning and our advocacy for the prisoners.
And I mean, clearly both of your organizations are extremely respected internationally on the international stage. I wonder if you could just explain a little bit more to our audience what actually is happening on the ground in terms of the recent steps that Israel has been taken to criminalize Palestinian society. Just to sort of really sort of unpack exactly what's happened in the last sort of month or so. Wissam, do you want to?
Sure. I mean, what we're seeing in the last month is really just a snapshot of something that's been ongoing for a much longer period of time, and it's been part of Israeli policy to undermine Palestinian civil society because of the role that it plays in challenging the occupation. And over the years, that challenge has taken different forms, but a lot of it involves laying sort of the mental foundation for the recent action, in the sense that the smear campaigns against organizations, conflation of terminology, of terrorism, anti-Semitism, Palestinian human rights, BDS, Israel's existence, all of these things are constantly used in a way that automatically over time lead people to associate one with all of the others. And so this has been a tactic that has been developed over time. And the attempts that Israel has used in developing a specific Ministry of Strategic Affairs to challenge the role of Palestinian civil society has initially targeted the funders, trying to convince them using this conflation of terminology and narrative to try to get them to disassociate and defund these organizations. But because all the argumentation that has been used, they've seen through it, and the Israeli strategy wasn't succeeding in getting others to turn away from us. And so I feel like what Israel has done basically is take the power that it has to impose the laws and take these steps in a way that reinforces their narrative and try to get those that weren't listening before to basically have to be forced to listen using this kind of tactic of the terrorist designation and unlawful association. So this is part of a longer process.
And in terms of that longer process, I mean, am I right in thinking that similar actions were taken to stop organizations, for instance, working in East Jerusalem previously, in terms of Sahab? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, definitely. And actually, this is a very important point to remember, that it's not something new that Israel is targeting Palestinian civil society. After the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, especially lots of organizations in Jerusalem that they were registered and active, including, by the way, Addameer and Defense for Children. Both, we were established in East Jerusalem and registered under the Israeli law. we were forced to close and move to Ramallah because Israel decided that the PA cannot have presence in East Jerusalem, and this is how they affected more than 50 Palestinian NGOs, and including the Orient House, of course, that was forced to be closed in East Jerusalem in order to ban any activity. And I should highlight that this is continuous. Like any organization in East Jerusalem, including cultural organizations, if they try to implement an act that the Israelis claim it's not according to their standards, they will force them to shut down the activity. They can use other tools in order to affect our daily work. They can arrest us. They can ban us from traveling outside the country. They can restrict freedom of movement inside the occupied territories between East Jerusalem and the West Bank, for example. They can deport our lawyer colleague Salah Hammouri. His residency is revoked after like allegations that he violated like respect to the state, and all these, of course, measures would be based on secret information as well, the same as it was used against the organizations. They can raid the offices, confiscate property, they can freeze our bank accounts. There's lots of different ways how they actually can affect our presence and our work on the daily level.
And when you say this is sort of secret information, you mean that as organizations or individuals, you're not actually privy to the charges that are being made against you?
Mostly, yes. When they base their decisions, like this decision, although they published, or not published, actually, the Israeli media published the kind of secret dossier that was presented for the Europeans in our case. But we should highlight that this dossier was drafted based on evidences in the military court. But of course, now they are claiming that they have more information that is classified information, which means secret information that would be used. It's the same process and procedure that they use in administrative detention cases, in family unification cases, in house demolitions. Like the use of secret evidences in the Israeli system, whether the military court system or the civil system, is very often used and very systematic, and this affects the whole concept of due process for any Palestinian in front of this system.
So, I mean, I think you've both given us a good overview of the sort of long history. I mean, obviously, both your organizations have been operating for decades, and you've been dealing, as Palestinians have for all of that time, in sort of a very systematic and complex kind of attack on human rights. How would you describe, I mean, to what extent would you see this step as fitting more broadly into Israel's apartheid and colonial system? Wissam, would you like to sort of talk a little bit more about how it sort of fits in the sort of long experience of living under Israel's regime?
Yeah, well, I mean, it actually, taking this kind of step reinforces the argument that we've been making, that this is a colonial regime, an apartheid regime implementing apartheid practices. And in fact, the Convention Against Apartheid specifically mentions the persecution of individuals and organizations for their work in combating apartheid. And so Israel, it's following the proper steps as a colonial power implementing an apartheid regime to take these kind of steps. And that's why we're not surprised by the fact that it's taken these steps, because it is the MO, so to say, of the historical use of these kind of tactics to try to suppress those that are in opposition to the colonial regime, the apartheid regime that is oppressing them. And what we see today really is just the refinement of these tools. And Sahar mentioned the issue of secret evidence. Now we also have the development in technology and how that evidence is collected, how it's controlled, and potentially manipulated. And I think considering the scope of control that Israel has over the Palestinian population, that issue of how it's able to control the technology and manipulate it potentially, that's one of the key areas of concern in trying to deal with any sort of secret evidence that, first of all, we won't be able to have access to. And then the concern that that evidence itself, using the control and the technology, could be fabricated as well.
And I mean, obviously, this is long-standing in terms of the different tactics that Israel is using to essentially close down all sorts of spaces for fighting for Palestinian rights. I think, though, it's the first time it's really attempted to criminalize a number of organizations all at the same time. Why do you think this kind of move has been made now in terms of escalating it all at once? I think organizations have been expecting these sorts of steps, but not necessarily at the same time.
Well, I mean, I have an opinion, and I think others share it as well, but it's very much connected to the discovery of the Pegasus spyware on some of our colleagues' phones, which we discovered just a few days before the initial designations came out. And that's kind of what triggered the concern in the first place, that we saw information or suspicious activity on the phones that led us to inquire with third parties like Frontline and Citizen Lab that started pulling the thread. And of course, once it was discovered on our end, there was, I don't know how the technology works, but there's a high likelihood that they knew it was discovered. And so taking this step very much needs to be seen within this broader picture of an awareness that that information and exposing the use of such technology would come out, that they tried to take this step as a preemptive measure to undermine our ability to follow through with an investigation on the matter and expose it.
Sahar, do you agree with that, or are there other elements as well that you think triggered this step?
No, I totally agree with Wissam, but I think also what Wissam mentioned before, all the development on the work on the international level, especially the fact that this year a special inquiry commission was founded by the Human Rights Council to investigate in the whole Palestinian territories on the sides of the Green Line after what happened in May. And this is very serious, like the changes on the international level, on the language, on the paradigm using apartheid language, and more accountability, trying to seek more accountability. The fact that the International Criminal Court would start their investigation, I think, and most of the organizations are in direct contact and feeding the ICC with information for the investigation, also supported the step to be taken now.
I just want to remind our audience while we're talking as well to do submit questions as we're going along, because I think that there's all sorts of things that will be rich for further discussion for sure along these lines. I mean, obviously the designation was made by Israel's Ministry of Defense, but the efforts that we've been talking about now to close down Palestinian civil society are made through a whole variety of platforms in different settings, both for organizations working on the ground there, but also sort of internationally as well. I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about the role of organizations like NGO Monitor in kind of providing cover for Israel's violations of international law. Wissam.
Well, I mean, NGO Monitor and others play an important role in supporting Israel's policy by being sort of a non-governmental arm, but the reality is they are working hand in hand along the same lines of the policy to target civil society and use these kind of smear tactics to undermine the work of the organizations. I've been personally put on the NGO Monitor's site, and I take that as a badge of honor. But the way that they have tried to take the arguments that we make and our use of international law and conflate it into things like anti-Semitism is part of their tactic in trying to make this narrative and connect us with things that have nothing to do with our work. But this is part of laying the groundwork for what the official side is able to do later.
Absolutely. I think also I'm also, I have the same badge of honor as well, and I suspect Sarah does as well. I think there's a sort of sense that you must be doing something wrong if you're not on NGO Monitor. But sorry, Sarah.
May I just to add one point on the NGO Monitor specifically? I think it's very important to be aware about the way and what kind of information they include in their reports. Mainly, it's either legal information taken from courts, the military court decisions, especially when they claim that someone is a terrorist person, it would be based on conviction by the military court, or tracking your social media posts and claiming that it's anti-Semitism or calling for violence. I wanted to highlight the fact that they are using the material of the military court is very important, because me as a lawyer and the Addameer as an organization for 30 years now, we're trying to disclose and expose these grave violations of not offering fair trial procedures, with the torture, with the ill treatment, with the arbitrary detention, with all the war crimes that this military system is imposing on the Palestinians for decades now. And then the world is listening to the NGO Monitor and accepting their facts that are taken based on these legal cases in the military court. How come? Like, seriously, political decision makers now will judge Addameer or Al-Haq or DCI or any of these 6 organizations based on these allegations that my team or board members or General Assembly members were convicted in front of this military court? At the end, this is the war crime that we were alerting against all these years. And this is part why we are designated, by the way.
Absolutely. And I think that this information is regurgitated and reposted in all sorts of different places, and you can always trace it back to the same source, essentially. And a lot of the time, I think, you often see it's literally just a statement of fact of the fact that people are standing up for certain international law, or whether it's human rights or international law generally, and that is seen as a sort of criminal offence on NGO Monitor as a very sort of basic stance. So I think this is a sort of escalation of that step, that now actually human rights are sort of associated with terrorism directly. I mean, obviously, though, it's an exceptionally serious designation, sort of materially. I wonder if you could just also talk a bit about what the direct impact really is on the 6 organizations that have been designated, just for lay people who won't necessarily understand exactly what that means for an organization. And also, I mean, I think just personally as well, it has an impact obviously on individuals and other members of staff, and what impact that has on you and indeed on your families too. So how do you want to talk a little bit
Let me start with the work of these organizations. Of course, part of us, they are giving direct services, let's say for farmers, for patients, for children, prisoners, for women. This would be affected seriously, that the daily programs, that the services that we offer, it would be affected. Add on top, of course, and it doesn't, also it should be highlighted that sometimes, for example, when you give legal aid for a prisoner, it's not just about the individual, it's the whole family, and mainly the parents, that we get the support for the legal consultation and how to deal with this system and how to face this system. So it's gonna affect huge amount of our communities. Also, as you said, the people who works in these organizations, like we all know that we could be arrested any moment, because the implementation of both the designation according to the Israeli anti-terror law of 2016 and the military order, the designation according to the military order, are supposed to be implemented immediately. Irrelevant if we appeal or not appeal, it means that any time the army can raid, can shut down physically the offices, can arrest the people, and so on. So it's really very terrifying. It can affect even your application. Like if I'm an employee in Addameer and I have a family unification process for my spouse in Jerusalem, it could be affected, because they will say, for security reason, you are a terrorist, now you will not grant you this family unification. There's lots of complications that we will face, us and our families and the people that we serve, and so on. So and we believe that it's not going to be the sex, because if this works, if this continues, it will mean that they can easily shut down tens of Palestinian civil society organizations, especially that they can make difference, whether on the level, on the work on the ground, in the Jordanian Valley, in the house eviction, in Sheikh Jarrah, in all these sensitive areas, and it will be against everyone.
And has it had a sort of direct impact at all? I mean, has anything so far stopped since the designation was made and since the military order came in? I mean, I know there were raids on offices that happened as well.
Definitely, like our colleagues, the DCI were raided. They were stealing computers before the designation, actually. The agriculture were committees with the health were committees that were designated even before were also raided. People were arrested, and their work is seriously affected. And it's very important. We are talking about thousands of farmers and thousands of patients that they were relying on the services of these organizations.
And Wissam, what has been the impact on Al-Haq, and then also obviously staff as well?
Well, I mean, as Sahar said, there have been attacks on other organizations before the designation, but really what's interesting in this context is they have the power to take direct action against us now. They can take different actions, whether it's coming to the offices, arresting us here, or when we travel and cross the borders, they have us within their midst as well. But that isn't what they are doing now. And if we were so dangerous, then why aren't they doing it? And I think that feeds into the real target behind this designation is international civil society. It is the support system that allows Palestinian civil society to be able to function, and by placing this terrorist designation on us, what they're trying to do is scare away that international support system, scare away those that are or the mechanism that is involved in allowing that support system to function, to try to hinder it from moving forward by using really behavioral psychology and putting us in a situation of fight or flight. And in this context, Israel is betting on flight, that that international support system will run for cover to avoid the headache that comes with this designation. And this way, they would indirectly lead to our difficulty in being able to sustain our work and continue, because that international support system is running for cover. And I think what we've seen is an opposite response. The international community, international civil society, has stood up and raised their voice against what is happening, because they see the truth. And even within the use of this unlawful association, even standing in support of these organizations could potentially lead you to years in prison as well. But it is this broader tactic that I think Israel is trying to use to have the international community and the support system step away from the support that it gives to Palestinian civil society, and undermine Palestinians' struggle for the right to self-determination through these mechanisms.
And could you just sort of say a little bit more about the international response and the kind of feedback that you've had, and whether it's sort of, whether there are differences between certain areas of the world to others? I mean, what sort of, I know international NGOs have been quite forthright, I think, in wanting to stand with the six, but what have government responses have been like? So, for instance, the European Union, the UK, we can come on to in a bit, but also the United States and others. Wissam, what sort of response has Al-Haq received?
Well, I mean, the response from the civil society actors has been much stronger, but the political actors, there have been some positive responses, but there's also a lot of deference given to the Israeli position, and this kind of wait and see approach to, okay, what is the evidence, knowing full well that Israel has raised this on numerous occasions, and they've been dismissive of it because it hasn't substantiated their allegations, but because the deference that they give to Israel, they keep going back rather than push back against these designations. And that's where I think we really need to see action, because this is very much a political move. We want to see more concrete action challenging this move on a political level, official statements that clearly express the lack of recognition for these designations and the continued support of Palestinian civil society. That is what we need more of, but unfortunately is still in the process, hopefully.
I mean, obviously, this is a clear attempt to delegitimize Palestinian civil society, but I wonder to what extent you think it's also an attempt to delegitimize Palestinian politics as well. Saha.
Yes, for some certain, it is definitely. If you want to think about the question of jurisdiction, if we think about us as Palestinian organizations registered in the Palestinian Interior Ministry, and we're almost all based in Ramallah, in Area A, according to the agreement with the Israeli side, what it means that the Israelis thinks that they have the power to shut us down, claiming that we are terrorists. At the end of the day, I've never submitted any of my financial or annual reports to the Israeli side. How come they can claim that I'm involved in money channeling to any terrorist group if they don't investigate this? This is the responsibility of the Palestinian Authority to make sure that I'm not violating the Palestinian law and the international standard that binds the Palestinian Authority. So I think this is also a question to the international community, especially to the political leaders that Wissam mentioned, that they are keep saying two-state solution, and we are, especially the Europeans, that in every opportunity they repeat that we're supporting two-state solution. What it means for you, two-state solution, if the Palestinian Authority wouldn't have authority on their own organizations? So I think, of course, it's a kind of effect to the Palestinian Authority responsibilities and authority and jurisdiction.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Wissam, as well?
Yeah, I think another important element within this context of colonizer and colonized and oppressor and oppressed, you have these two different sides, and with the international community looking at a two-state solution among the two sides, what Israel is doing with this tactic is trying to eliminate part of those actors engaged in the process, the Palestinian civil society that the EU engages with, for example, by Israel taking this kind of step and trying to remove us from the equation. What they are indirectly doing is trying to dictate to the EU its foreign policy of who it can and cannot engage with on the Palestinian civil society side with regard to civil society. And I think that is an important element that the international community needs to be aware of and address, because if you allow, in this context of an asymmetrical power balance, one side to remove the other side from the ability to be able to engage with the third party, it undermines the entire system of what international law is supposed to be able to do, is level the playing field.
One of the statements that the UK government came out with yesterday actually was that the designation, when they were asked about what they were doing around the designation, and they said the Minister for the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office said that it was the designation was an internal matter for Israel. And I think she also said that she was in contact, or that they were still having conversations with organizations themselves. I wonder, has there been any contact with your organizations from the UK government, and what's your response to that statement? Saha.
Not directly, no. And I can't remember now, maybe Wissam, when we met the whole diplomatic group at the first week of the designation, whether a representative from the UK was there or not in this meeting in Al-Haq.
Yeah, I actually was in Europe at the time, but personally, I met with a UK official in Geneva after the designation as part of our advocacy work in general. But I think the statement with regard to this being an internal matter is really hits at the heart of the problem, because Israel is acting towards Palestinian civil society actors in occupied territory, and that is the real problem of Israel trying to apply its laws against Palestinians in occupied territory. And another caveat to this position coming from the UK official is the fact that the use of the unlawful association is rooted in British colonial history and the use of emergency regulation. And so I think it isn't a surprise to see the former colonial powers taking a position that falls in line with the contemporary manifestation of colonialism. And while I have the platform, I want to remind people that this is the 4th international decade for the eradication of colonialism. And in this initiative, there have been only 3 states that voted no, a formal no vote for this initiative. And those are the US, the UK, and Israel. And so you can take that for what it's worth as well.
That's a depressing triumvirate, but not unexpected, I have to say. I mean, on that note, it would be really useful just to know what you think we can do to support you and your organizations most effectively in the face of these attacks, but also in terms of the broader picture that you've painted this evening as well. Sahar.
I think it's very important to keep the pressure on the different governments, like in your case, of course, the UK, not to respect, not to take this decision and to act based on it, and not to wait for an open time for this Israeli claim that we will present more information. This is seriously affecting any due process in any democratic system. Not enough that you're basing it on secret information, you're developing it by the time, like not when you take the decision to designate these 6 organizations. It shouldn't be given this chance for the state of Israel to offer more information to prove what they decided a couple of months ago. And I think really it's not about the legal procedures and the legal, no one should expect that we can win, even if we appeal, even if we go to the high court, the highest court in Israel as a justice court. It's not gonna be justice. It's not gonna rule for these 6 organizations. And this is why the political decision, the political pressure is gonna make the difference. This is why it's very important to keep the story on the top of the agenda, to keep the discussion about the story, and to push governments not to take actions, to push government to go out with very clear statements and to tell the banks, because I think it's gonna be very important. The silence is very concerning, is very worrying. Like if they don't go out with very clear message that we don't implement this decision, this is not gonna send a clear message to the banking system all over the world that we are okay and they can work with us, because I think this is part of what Israel is relying on, that maybe they will not take measures now, But in a couple of months, we will not be able to work because banks decided not to deal with us, and there's no transactions taking place from Europe to the occupied territories and so on. So I would give the chance as well for Wissam to add. I'm sure he have lots of things.
Well, because there are so many options of what people can do. I mean, depending on where you are and what you do, you can take political action, you can take economic action, you can take individual action of solidarity. But the most important thing is to not remain silent. And so if you're in a position of political power, to raise this at the political level, if you're in a position of an economic institution or a finance institution, to raise this issue, in an academic institution, to raise this issue, because what Israel is betting on is that people will simply want to avoid the headache, and that will make it easier for them to control the matter, keeping it between them and us. But the more this becomes a systemic issue that makes it very impractical and impossible for Israel to try to actually implement, because everyone is standing with the six. Everyone is expressing solidarity. Everyone is continuing to come and visit these organizations, continuing to support and fund projects. That pushes back against what Israel is betting on, that people will take the path of least resistance and simply go somewhere else. And unfortunately, we've seen one example of this, but I think it's good that this example took place early on, because it gives us something to point to, where one organization said they're going to discontinue their support for a particular project because they were concerned that it might impact their work in 30 other countries. So if Israel is banking on this cost-benefit analysis that they will sacrifice Palestine for the rest of their work, I think this sends it's a litmus test for the international community and how much we really believe in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and dignity for all.
Thank you so much, both of you. I think that's been a great few steps for us to think about. I'm going to open it up for other questions to come from our audience now, as I know that a number of them have been entered into the Ask a Question box at the bottom. And the first one is from Ron Mendel, asking what ramifications will the Israeli government's attempted criminalization of the 6 NGOs have on the International Criminal Court's investigation into the alleged war crimes committed by Israel in 2014 against Palestinians in Gaza? Wissam, do you want to start on that one, and then also Sahar, if you could come in?
Sure. I mean, the investigation's been opened. There's plenty of material already there, and so the prosecutor can continue to move forward based on the information already available. What I think is part of Israel's strategy is to undermine the ability to reinforce and supply additional information. But as I said in the beginning, we do this work, but others do as well, and others can continue to do it because in the end, it is the pursuit of accountability and redress for the victims. And so the belief that they're trying to eliminate us from the picture eliminates the pursuit of justice is bound to fail.
Sahar, is there anything you want to add?
No,
Okay.
I support Wissam.
So then I'm going to go to the next question from Al-Haq, saying, I understand this question could be difficult to answer for a number of reasons, but to what extent is the Palestinian Authority complicit in the actions that are taken by Israel vis-a-vis Palestine? And how is that having a trickle-down effect on civil society groups like yours? Sahar.
I think in this specific case, this is legitimate to feel like maybe the PA has a hand in this, but I think I don't believe that really they were pushing for such a decision, because as I said before, it's also at some point attacking us, especially if we want to think about also all this sharing information and investigation on the security level. It's their role, but this doesn't mean that we were not criticizing and we were not working also against the PA, especially in the last couple of months. And maybe this is also give a green light for the Israelis that for the timing, I mean, that they can do it now, because after the killing of Nizar Banat, the Palestinian activists, and all the demonstrations and the attacks on the demonstrators, Addameer, Al-Haq, all of Bisan Center, all these organizations were very active within the local network against these PA violations. So we were criticizing the PA a lot in the last couple of months, and before on the level of the...
Could you just explain a little bit for people who don't know a little bit about that killing and the background around that as well?
Yeah, because Nizar was a Palestinian, very well known Palestinian local activist on the political discourse, and he was running for the election. If the election were supposed to happen in May, he was supposed to be sharing in the election. And unfortunately, he was several times arrested by the PA, but the last time when they raided the place he was sleeping on, they killed him actually by beatings and kicking and using wooden steel sticks. And this has caused lots of tension internally, like lots of demonstrations requesting investigation and finding the perpetrators accountable. And it was causing lots of clashes internally for a couple of months, like more than 2 months. Demonstrations were taking place on weekly basis, and all these demonstrations were attacked by the police, by civil personnel, by the security forces, and so on. And some more than 20 other Palestinian activists were still under trial. Like just yesterday, the Ramallah court acquitted 7 of them from the charges that were submitted against them. So it's still going on, this tension between the civil society and the PA actually. And maybe Israel thought that, okay, this is a good time now, the PA anyway is attacking these NGOs, so we can designate them and there's nothing will happen. And the PA, but I think the official, at least the official position of the PA, they issued, the Prime Minister, the President, the ministries, the Foreign Ministry shared with us in the press conference in the first day. They all, in their official statements, were very supportive, and they are still actually doing a kind of lobbying on the UN level, in the EU level for some certain, and in other platforms.
Wissam, is there anything you'd like to add in reference to that question?
I just want to reinforce what Sahar said with regard to this kind of action really undermining the perception that the Palestinian Authority has any authority. Because if as Palestinian civil society organizations registered under the Palestinian Authority and operating under their license, for Israel to take such actions against us sends a message that the Palestinian Authority is unable to secure and protect those organizations that it licenses as well. And so that undermines any perception of authority and sends a very dangerous message to what power and authority really exists. And I think the steps that have been taken to push back reflect this this concern by the Palestinian Authority as well, that these organizations are under our jurisdiction, and we have the responsibility to deal with them by intervening. You're undermining our authority as well. I think we'd like to see the Palestinian Authority continue to play a role that supports the 6 organizations and push back against these kind of actions by the Israeli occupying power.
The next question that we have is from Pamela. Is from Naomi, which says, do you think Israel will attempt to extend this sort of designation or other forms of control to Israeli organizations in the future, such as B'Tselem or Zochrot, for example, or will it use other means, as it has done with the law passed in 2019, which requires NGOs to state how much foreign funding they receive and therefore seeks to conflate international funding with disloyalty to the state? Wissam, do you want to answer that first?
No, I'll let Sahar. She had the answer ready.
I don't think they can go so far on the internal level to designate them as like terrorist organizations based on the 2016 law. Like they should have bases, at least factual bases. I think like it would be for against an Israeli organization. It's not gonna be the same. Like even the Israeli legal system wouldn't be treating the designation in the same way that they deal with Palestinian organizations, even if the Palestinian organization in this case is a Israeli organization, because we should highlight that actually lots of organizations that Israel claim that they are affiliated with the Islamic movement, the north part of the Islamic movement inside Israel, were closed and shut down, and in the same way as we are facing now. But definitely they can use other techniques and other tools like these laws that force them to disclose the fund resources and all the anti-PDS, for example, the PDS law that they can face lawsuits if they are calling for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and so on. And they can invent new measures. Like this is the most important thing, that I think they can develop more and more techniques in the future if they need, especially against organizations like B'Tselem, that they're using now more clear language on apartheid.
Wissam, you passed that over neatly to Sahar. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that one?
Well, I'll take it from a different angle, that these Israeli organizations, they have an important role to play as well in challenging our designations, because in the history of colonialism, we have seen those actors under the umbrella of the civilizing mission to act on behalf of the indigenous population and pursue a kindler, gentler form of colonialism. And I think in this context, it is very important for those Israeli organizations that genuinely want to see the Palestinian realization of the right to self-determination and the end to occupation, to take a strong stance in support of these Palestinian civil society organizations, because this kind of attack to eliminate Palestinian civil society and leave Israeli civil society to be the actors on behalf of the Palestinian people is also a recipe for a continuation of the colonization of Palestine.
And there is another question also that we have from Pamela Blakelock this time, which is around the UK Home Secretary's recent move to name Hamas as a terrorist organization. It was, the military wing was already designated by the UK, but the political wing is now being named as a terrorist organization too. And I wonder, or Pamela wonders, what effect this will have on the ground in Palestine too. Sahar, go to you first, but I will come back to you as well, Bisan.
I think the same impact that, like, all these designation and blacklists that the EU, I think the UK now is taking this step because they pulled from the EU. Before, they were included in the EU measures that was already there. So it would be used, I assume, in the same way that Israel is trying to push for, actually, for all these years. And we should remind ourselves that according to the Israeli military orders and the list that is updated and issued by the ministry inside Israel, security ministry, all Palestinian political parties, the PLO is still listed as a illegal entity and a terrorist group, which means all the members, including Fatah, the main party in the PLO, is still designated. And at the end, shows that this is part of it, much political and politicized step. One should ask why Israel is not implementing it in the same way that they are trying to implement it against Hamas, for example. Why Fatah leaders are not arrested just because they are Fatah members in Fatah, because Fatah itself is still declared illegal. So this reflects the hypocrisy as well. And I think it's much politicized, and the impact would be to be used to punish Hamas more and more in the future.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that? Oh, I think you're still on mute. Sorry, Bisan.
We've seen time and time again how the issue of the label of terrorism and the use of the term is used in a political manner. And that's why our work focuses on adherence to the rule of law, international humanitarian law, and the protections that are offered and the prohibitions that are there. And we see time and time again how the use of terrorism plays into the power dynamics of the different parties. And if you look at how long it took for Nelson Mandela to be removed from the terror list as well, that gives you an indication of how the use of this term plays within the political context and how it's used and abused. And that's why it is important to challenge its use, especially within our context as a people under occupation, colonial domination, and pursuing the right to self-determination against a colonial power. And so having one side that has that control to be able to use the international system and the term of terror to challenge and undermine the other side, it's something that the international community needs to step back and look at the broader context of of a colonizer and a colonized, and how those dynamics play out, and the tools that are being used therein, and address it in a objective manner that leads to the solution that is sought, which is the respect for the rule of law and end to the occupation.
Thank you. We just have time, I think, for a couple more questions. So the penultimate one I'm going to take is from Bettina, who asked, do you see a connection between the designation of the 6 NGOs and the case of Mohammed Halabi and the World Vision case? Sahar, do you see a connection there?
The connection, of course, that it's very similar, like the Mohammed Halabi case. For those that they don't know the case, it's more or less the same. Mohammed Halabi used to be the director of the World Vision, a humanitarian aid organization, that he was arrested by Israel, accused and charged by the claim that he was channeling money from the organization to Hamas. And it should be highlighted, the guy is still awaiting trial. He wasn't convicted yet. For 5 years, he is awaiting trial. In the same time, Australia did the investigation, the audit on the organization. They said and they confirmed that there was no proof for such money channel. It wasn't there. And still the guy is in prison. So the connection that this is the way, this is the example, this is reflects what we can expect in the Israeli justice system. And he was offered a plea bargain of 3 years that he rejected because the guy claims I never did it. And he's fighting for his innocence for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you want to add, Wissam, on his case?
Just that the system works here in a way where you are guilty until proven innocent, unfortunately. And this is the challenge we have moving forward. Yeah,
it's a very difficult situation, and it plays out for so long over time as well, isn't it? I mean, he has been held for a very long time now without any proof being really brought against him. So our final question is from Brooke. Is the recent creation of the ongoing UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry a source of hope? Sahar. Can you hear us, Sahar?
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself at the beginning. I think, yes, we like, it's very important to keep the hope with all these tools and mechanisms, even though that we don't see the results immediately or in proper time. But I think it's very, very, very important to keep pushing for these measures to be taken, especially in the UN level, because history will tell that we were trying, we were collecting evidences, we were filing cases in this system. And if we at the end don't reach a point where really justice is brought and all this could be ending and someone would pay the price for it, I mean accountability, real accountability, this will mean that the whole system is not working. I think Palestine is a very powerful test for the international human rights and humanitarian law system that was developed all these centuries. If the case of Palestine falls, this is mean the whole system is not working and cannot work.
Thank you, Sahar. And Wissam, do you feel hopeful around the UN Commission?
Well, we have to be hopeful in our context. That's what keeps us going, and the hope that the system will work is why we engage in it. We know the challenges that are there, but this commission of inquiry is a good example of how persistence can lead to development within the system, the opportunity to look at the root causes of the conflict and look at the historic Palestine and see the story in its totality is very important for the UN mechanism to do this now. There's a lot of history there as well, but we are also dealing with new generations, and they are going to be seeing this from a different perspective today than those that haven't done historical research. But what's more important really is how this system is going to play out for Palestine, as Sahar mentioned, in the long run. If there is an exception in this system, it undermines the entire system. And Israel continues to take this exceptionalism that it's treated with and push the boundaries to get away with more and more. And this recent designation is a symbol of that arrogance and impunity that it enjoys. And it will continue to push until the international community pushes back. And so there have to be limits into how far Israel can go. And this is a good example of when the international community can step up and say enough is enough. You can't keep undermining the entire system, because if Israel is allowed to do it, others are going to be able to do it as well. And that sends a dangerous message for the entire system. And the hope for the rule of law and young human rights activists coming up that want to better understand the system and use it if their ultimate path in success through the human rights system is to be designated as a terrorist. That's not a message that we want to see sent to the new generation of human rights advocates.
I'm going to add a cheeky question at the very end of this as well myself, which is just really around hope and given how difficult the situation is and how long it has been as well, how are you hopeful for the future, and how do you keep hope alive, both of you, in your work? And Sahar, first of all.
We have to, there's no choice, there's no other option, because otherwise it would be even more horrible. And working with the prisoners all these years, honestly, I think you have to be hopeful and continuing. Otherwise, you cannot support them. You cannot be there for them in facing torture and horrible experience. And I think what keeps the hope as well is the support of the friends around the world. This designation reflected by the reaction of the hundreds of supporters, if not more than hundreds. It really was very warming that we are there, not alone. There's lots of people supports us, and this gives power and gives hope for the future.
We have no option, and I have to keep hope. When I look in my children's faces, there has to be a bright future that I can try to contribute to delivering for them. And we know that the Martin Luther King said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And we have to have faith in humanity pursuing justice. But unfortunately, there are a lot that take the path of least resistance. And that makes the struggle harder. But in the long run, we have faith that justice will prevail, because the system works towards equilibrium in the end, and equilibrium and justice go hand in hand.
Well, that couldn't be a better note to end our talk this evening. We've reached the end, and I want to thank you both, Saha and Wissam, for giving us your time and your amazing insights. And unexpectedly, given the situation, also a great sense of hope. I think you've been quite extraordinary. So thank you so much. It's also been really important just to hear how critical this case for the Six is in terms of the wider Palestinian society's struggle, and also Palestinian society as a whole, but also the issue of Palestine and social justice more broadly as well. I thought you put it very brilliantly, Saha, when you talked about how if this issue falls, then everything else crumbles with it. So thank you so much to Saha and Wissam, and I hope you'll join us again for our upcoming events, and have a great evening, everybody.